Welcome back to the Guardian Project podcast. I'm your host, Andy, and a lot of my commander decks are built to smash.
A 1 red mana to give trample and something.
I don't know what it does. It just worked with the intro.
And I'm your other host, Mike. And just a public service announcement. If someone uses Curse of the Swine on any of your vehicles, they don't actually get exiled. They just turn into Hambroginis.
Hambroginis.
Please listen carefully.
And this is the podcast where we talk about all things Magic the Gathering.
But mostly Commander.
So we don't have a lot we're going to talk about this week. We're going to jump into it pretty quick. But before we do that, we have to thank all of our patrons. We appreciate all of your support. And if you want to support us, you can head to patreon.com/guardianprojectpod and donate for any dollar amount. We have lots of cool stuff to give out. And also, I guess if you also didn't know, join our Discord. That doesn't require you to be a patron. No. Come just hang out with us too.
Totally free. Find us on Twitter to find that Discord link for sure. And if you're looking for another way to support the podcast, whatever platform you are enjoying the podcast on now, if you could subscribe, rate, review, and leave comments, we would be most appreciative.
You can find us online at theguardianprojectpodcast.com. We stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/guardianprojectpodcast. We're on social media on Twitter at guardianpod, Instagram at guardianprojectpodcast. Gameplay videos can be found on our YouTube channel, Guardian Project. And you can email us at guardianprojectpod@gmail.com. What are we doing this week?
This week, we have a giant bag of mail consisting of questions that we are to answer.
Let's get into it. So we have, it's been a while since we answered questions.
Yeah.
And we've gotten a lot of them. And a lot of wacky ones. So we're excited to go through these today. So let's kick it off. Our first question at Jestervest asks, if you had to build a deck with your least favorite color combo, what would you build that you haven't built before?
Yeah. So this was a little bit different one. I don't know if there's a particular color combination that I would call my least favorite. So
I have one.
I just looked at color combinations that I haven't built before. And so that's Jund, Naya, and Orzhov are the 3 colors that I've never built before. And I've only ever built one Mardu deck, and it was a theme deck. So I don't know which one. I mean, maybe Naya is the color combination that I would call my least favorite, only because it always just seems like creature-based swing to win, and it didn't really ever feel like more than that to me, because it's whenever I think Naya, I just think dinosaurs or Atla Palani eggs or something like that. But I could do like a Tana the Bloodsower and Bruce Tarl deck to do some like Saproling tokens and like some double strike and lifelink action going on or something. Or because Tana the Bloodsower, whenever she deals damage, you make that many 1/1 Saproling creature tokens. And then Bruce Tarl, and she has partner. And then Bruce Tarl is the other partner that I would have with it, that when it enters the battlefield or attacks, target creature gets double strike and lifelink. And Tana already has trample, so giving Tana double strike, lifelink, trample seems like kind of a cool idea.
You don't have a Naya deck at all, do you? Have you ever had one?
I don't think I've ever had a Naya deck or a Jund deck. Or an Orzhov deck. I've built some Orzhov decks on like Architect and stuff, like my Edgar Markov Charmed Prince deck. I have it built in Architect, but I've never actually built it in paper. So, you know, but really, I think the one that sticks out the most to me is Jund. The fact that I've never built Jund. Jund kind of seems like my wheelhouse. But after like seeing Lord Windgrace, and I was like, well, I don't really want to build that. And then on the other spectrum, there's like Thantos, the War Weaver. And I'm like, I don't really want to build that either. So Jund's never really called out to me. I mean, there's Corvold, but Corvold's just a little too strong.
I build very few 3-color decks in general. And so that's where I went, because I build 5-color more than I build 3-color.
Sure.
And I don't build 4-color.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, either you've got the one option from the precons, or you have the original partners to pair up. That's basically
now there's Stranger Things
and now there's Stranger Things but again, it's still partners. And so I have an Naya deck currently. I have Minsk Beloved Ranger together. I played Marisi Breaker the Coil before. My least favorite is definitely Jund or Mardu.
Okay.
I don't really like either of those colors. They just don't do the things that I really want to do. Marduk's definitely higher on my list than Jund. I had an Edgar Markov deck.
Sure.
I put it back together just so I had another try now that we've gotten all these zombies vampires from hitting Innistrad again.
Right.
So if I were to build another Mardu deck, I don't know, I'd probably build something like Alesha Who Smiles at Death, only because it's a combo deck. But if I'm looking at Jund, I had Lord Windgrace. I really didn't like that. We've talked about decks that we took apart. Gone but not forgotten, and that was Lord Windgrace.
Yeah.
I remember how it played out. I played Glacial Chasm, and you had literally no way to get to me, and so I just kind of went until I found a win. Yurlok is cool. I've lost to Yurlok before, but I don't think I'm really interested in building like Prosh or Thantis. Shattergang Brothers is something that interests me,
sure,
but it feels too much like a Dictate of Erebos with the sacrifice on it. I'm going to go with Jund as well.
Okay.
But I would build maybe Lord Windgrace again.
Okay.
I'd have to put, none of the others are really calling to me at all if I had to go with that color pair.
Okay. So no, see, I would always tell people if there's a color combination that you don't like, try Partners, because I love Partners. I love everything about Partners.
I don't know. I feel like it's cheating though, because you're not
cheating.
really doing the thing. You're building.
That's why. That's why, because I don't like the color. I don't like the typical things that color combination does. So I'm going to do something atypical.
Yeah, I think that's how I viewed it too. Is this color wants to do these things? I mean, last year we saw that Secuar Deathkeeper made it onto the top of our lists as commanders that we played against and had. And that was cool. That makes tokens and stuff.
Yeah, Shaman Tribal was typically what we saw.
Kodama the East Tree, Vile Smasher the Fierce. I mean,
seems strong.
That doesn't seem bad, but it doesn't seem Mardu. It seems like you're playing a Kodama deck and just getting value from Vile.
Oh yeah, probably the big thing. Yeah, just cast one big spell, do a lot of big damage, and get a free stuff out of it. Yeah, that seems right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think this particular next question was more directed at you. At least the first half of it. Why do you hate Gavi so much?
Gavi Nest Warden. Okay, so Gavi's a human shaman. It's in Jeskai color, so a color combination that I like: blue, red, white. And this is the cycling commander, so you can pay 0 rather than cycle the first card you cycle each turn, and whenever you draw your second card on your turn, you make a red and white dinosaur cat. It's a deck that snowballs is the problem. And I don't hate the deck at all. It just is one of those decks where you have to remove Gavi. And if you don't, you're probably going to get steamrolled. But then I feel bad for removing that person's Gavi for the third or the fourth time.
Right.
But I can't let, Gavi be out and have like an Astral Drift or, Herald of the Forgotten, which lets you cycle abilities from, I believe it's like, you can return any number of target permanent cards with cycling abilities from your graveyard to the battlefield. If you cast that card, they get all their value back. It's just too much. Astral Drift bouncing my stuff. That's why I don't like Gavi, but I actually like Gavi. I just don't want to play against it very often.
I think that's totally fair. But follow-up question. Is there a card that has been printed in the last few sets that really surprised you in terms of how good or how bad it is in Commander? And maybe that's, Gavi being super, super good. I think we kind of knew Gavi was going to be good, though. The first cycling commander in a very long time. So maybe it's associated, maybe it's not associated, these two questions. But is there a card that was printed in the last few sets that really surprised you in terms of how good or how bad it is in Commander?
Yeah, so a card that I didn't think was going to be very good was from Strixhaven Commander, and it's the Commander Brina the Demagogue.
Ooh,
so I feel like this is the Edric that Commander or Commander Wizards was going for. Edric turned into just like a Simic value extra turns, and it was like a bunch of silly 1/1s with like flying for one, and like it just swarmed too fast. And so Brina is a 1/3 flying bird warlock for 1 a white and a black, and it says whenever a player attacks one of your opponents, if that opponent has more life than another one of your opponents, that attacking player draws a card, and then the Brina player gets to put 2+1/+1 counters on a creature they control. And this doesn't seem bad until Brina has gotten maybe 6 counters on it. Then you go, crap, this is, it's a 7/10 flyer,
right?
And they're doing other things. but I'm a sucker for card draw. So I'm going to do
course.
it, and I'm going to give you your counters every time. And then I'm going to feel good, though, when I die to Brina. I played with Tap That MTG a couple of weeks ago, and Leslie played a Brina deck and got there. And Leslie didn't play it as a politics deck. I mean, it kind of was.
Sure.
But she didn't want to just crush with Brina commander damage, but it didn't matter. There was too much going on that all the value went to Leslie. And I was like, well, it's a good way to go out.
Yeah. Oops. I have a giant creature that could kill you with commander damage now.
Yeah. So if you haven't played against this, or if you have, I hope you have seen the same experience, because it's a fun commander. And I think it's doing the politic game appropriately. It's like nice. Right. It's doing it right.
It's nice to see politics on an Ishai Ojutai Dragon Speaker, the blue-white partner that just gets +1/+1s anytime someone casts a spell. It's nice to see there's a politics version of it with Brina.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. Now, I kind of did a cycle of cards, but there was one card in particular that made me name this as a card that I thought was way more powerful than I thought it was going to be. And that is also from the Strixhaven set, but Strixhaven Commander. It's the cards with Demonstrate. Specifically, Excavation Technique. I got to cast in one of our last games that I played Osgir, the Reconstructor on. An Excavation Technique is a 4-mana sorcery with the Demonstrate keyword, which means you can copy the spell. And if you do, target opponent gets a copy of the spell. An Excavation Technique says destroy target non-land permanent. Its controller creates 2 treasure tokens. And the reason that I never thought this was going to be good is like, if I try to demonstrate it, then whoever I give the copy of the spell to might hit one of my permanents with it. And maybe that's like the intention of the balance behind it. But really, it just turns into make a deal with one person and get rid of 3 problematic permanents for 4 mana. And the other Demonstrate cards here are like Creative Technique in red, Healing Technique in green, Incarnation Technique in black, and Replication Technique in blue. All of which you can copy the spell if you give another copy to one of your opponents.
Yeah, I finally saw one of those cards cast, and I didn't realize how much they actually do for what's written on them. And it was the blue one that I saw being cast, and it was good.
I destroyed your Smothering Tithe with the white one.
Yeah.
It was great. You got 2 treasures out of it. It's like
That's
turboing
fair.
The Smothering Tithe.
And then we saw another game not too far after that got like 30 treasures. And I was like, man, I wish I had a removal for that.
Wish I had my Demonstrate removal.
I wish I had my Demonstrate card. All right. Next question is from @Lootpricon. They ask, do you think CEDH being more in the limelight has changed the format or confused the player base? I don't think it's confused the player base. I think it's good. I think it's good that it's been in the limelight, but I think the conversation of what CEDH is versus what it was 3 years ago has changed. Because it's like, are you ramping really fast? How are you trying to win? Is your win con a 2-card combo that you can consistently do on turn 3? It's not the boogeyman that everybody thought it was. And I will say, years ago, I was like, man, this feels like pub stomping, but it's not. You have to go into it with the same expectation in a deck that you think can stand up to whatever it is. I think it's good that it's in the limelight. I do just think, though, that the pregame chat of saying I'm running all the fast mana in my, like, I don't know. You can play Noyandar as CEDH, I guess. I'm using air quotes right now by saying I just put in 12 fast mana and I'm removing some of my more expensive cards that aren't going to do as much. Maybe it's more powerful in games that aren't as fast. And then if I can get Noyandar out on turn 2, it's a pretty good deck on its own. It just, and that's, I guess that's my thought. I don't think it's confused the player base. I think it's just opened up more conversation about what it is.
I think like a year ago, I want to say there was a whole big argument. It was right when the argument about whether Flash was going to be banned or not, because it wasn't a problematic card for lower power Magic or Commander. It was only a problem in CEDH, and it really started people talking about like, what is CEDH? What makes a deck CEDH? And people look at these permanents, the fast mana crypt, and Dockside Extortionist as potentially CEDH cards. But what I think it did, definitely something that we've grown as a podcast and grown as players over the past I'll say 6 months is really exemplifies the rule zero conversation of making sure that you know exactly what decks people are bringing, what turn people are trying to win on, or if you're like a control pillow fort deck, like, oh yeah, I won't win until turn 10, but I will not allow anyone else to do anything until then. Having that conversation and making sure that when I do play Dockside Extortionist in my Cody Vociferous Codex secret Brash Taunter deck, that it's like, it's a secret Brash Taunter deck. Yes, I do play Dockside in it, but it's okay. It's a secret Brash Taunter deck kind of deal. So exemplifying the rule zero conversation, I think, is mostly what it did. It may have added some confusion to people going, why can't I play Dockside Extortionist in my casual deck? And you can. Just make sure you have your rule zero conversation.
Yeah, and I also think there's a pretty big difference now between rule zero and pregame chat, because rule zero is legalizing things that might not necessarily be legal, and pregame chats is just maybe even aligning the experience that you want. And, and there's a question later on that we'll go over the experience that we want in our games, because on our last stream we had an experience that we wanted. Right. And so I think it had worked. And I also had tweeted out earlier this year that I was at a 26% win rate after, and I think at the time it was like 48 games. Mm-hmm. And I said, I think I crushed it, right? I'm gonna toot my own horn here that I'm playing in the right pods and I'm playing the cards the way that they can be played. I presented a combo that's an infinite combo with a Kiki Jiki Mirror Breaker and not the Zealous Conscripts, the Coercive Pirate.
Coercive Recruiter.
Yep, the Coercive Recruiter. And I didn't go for it because I was like, this is a game that is meant to be, like, the game we were playing was fun. Mm-hmm. And I said, I'm not trying to ruin it. And this was in my Minsk deck.
Right.
So I just used it to steal creatures and then kill their creatures. So I used it almost like a board wipe.
Right.
And then it came back to bite me in the butt because I didn't destroy my own stuff and someone else got to use them. So that was a lot of fun. But yeah, no, I think it's been good for the format that it's more in the limelight.
Yes. Now, the next question also comes from us from @LootPercon. They ask, how has the overall format changed in your opinion? Has it been faster, more competitive, or too homogenous?
I want to start with the last one, the too homogenous question, because I think it's not that.
Okay.
I have seen so many different commander decks, and I am seeing far more commander decks that I have to ask what they do now, because we're getting so many new commanders and we're getting precons and just playing with such a diverse group instead of just your own play group. So I think this question depends on who you're playing with. So for us, where we're streaming with guests every other week right now, or we have in the past streamed every week, and then we're playing with our own play group who on their own are building new decks. I think I'm writing down a new commander more often than not. And last year I played, I don't remember, I wish I remember the exact number, but it was somewhere in the 400s I played against 400 different unique commanders, which I think is astounding. So I don't think it's too homogenous. Faster? Yes, I think it's getting faster. And that might be due to people like us who make suggestions to play cards like Arcane Signet and Signets in general to have ramp on 2. And I think there's other shows that have talked about 3-mana rocks not being exactly where they want it to be.
Right.
And maybe that's part of the reason. But I do think that it has been faster. You've been tracking the turn or the turns that the games end on. And for the first 2 streams that we had where we had good pregame chats, they all ended on 8.
Yes.
And people think 8 is really early. And I don't necessarily think it is now.
No, I don't think it is. I think people don't realize how long an 8-turn game takes.
And it took about
an hour to an hour and a half.
An hour to an hour and a half. And so when you ask how long do you want this game to be, that's the thing what people aren't asking. So you're saying, well, what power level you're playing? And I go, well, I want to play a game that takes about an hour and 15 minutes to an hour and a half. And Shivan Bhat was asking, how long have your games been taking? And so I replied and said, this was on stream with other content creators who were, prepared to have this conversation. And it took an hour to an hour and a half for an 8-turn game. I've played 2.5 hour games. And at the end, I'm burnt out. Yeah. I would love to play another game, but I can't do it. It's gotta be another 45-minute game, but that's a fast game.
For sure. Now, what about competitiveness?
I don't know. I would say it hasn't changed too much. We're just getting more alternate win cons and maybe better. Maybe now that we started focusing on the Commander format a lot, we're seeing a lot more competitively designed card. I mean, Orvar, the all form that came out in Call Time. I took that thing apart so fast because I felt bad. And I just built it with the silly cards that make copies of things, but unfortunately I made 24 Smothering Tides.
Well.
So I mean, I guess I could have chosen a different permanent, but it kind of made sense.
Right, it does.
What do you think?
So I'll start with homogenization as well. I would say maybe people's removal packages might be homogenizing a little bit more, because there are, like, when I look at the removal that I build with my decks, the first things I turn to are Chaos Warp in red, Generous Gift in white, Beast Within in green. Those are like the staples that I want to put in my decks. And maybe we're getting to that point where you just take your entire removal control package that you have that takes up 10 to 15% of your deck, and it's the same for the same color combination for the rest. And we talked about the new cycle lands that are coming with Kamigawa, and I haven't put them into any of my decks yet, but there's no reason not to other than price point. But the note I have here for homogenization is a lot of people, and maybe it's just content creators, but you can do this in your own playgroups too. They put deck building restrictions, whether that's a budget that you have to be completely under. Maybe there's a budget for each card. Maybe there's certain cards you say you can and cannot play, or maybe you just have a budget, how much you can spend on a deck. And that's going to limit the homogenization. No one's going to be able to, or not everyone's going to be able to spend $40 for a Beseiju for every single deck that they have that has green.
Right.
So hopefully that helps. And I know, like, Companions from Ikoria brings on a deck building restriction that I particularly liked. And as you said, Andy, people building around commanders, they're never going to stop making new legendary creature commanders, and that's going to help combat the homogenization as well. So although it might feel like it at times during preview week and everything, I don't think your actual pods are actually going to be showing that homogenization.
Right.
In terms of speed, I would say I don't really know a format that hasn't been like this level of commander. Obviously, the slower games, maybe because it's more creature based and stuff. But for every 2-mana rock that I play, I suppose my opponent's probably going to play a 2-mana rock too. So we're always at the same level. Maybe we're getting to our combos faster, but I have more removal faster to combat that combo. So although it may seem like you can do stuff earlier, your opponents should also be able to stop you earlier at the same time. So I'm not really sure I'll say that speed is going up. Competitiveness, I think, does. There's more win conditions out there. People are forced to put in more removal, more counter spells. But I think that's actually kind of helped Commander as a format, so that it's not just someone playing solitaire until they win. You actually have to play around your opponent. So I do think competitiveness has gone up, but it's a good thing.
Yeah. All right. Our next question comes from CDM Rakdos Charmer, and they ask, what's the most expensive card you've regretted buying and why?
So I don't know if So I can't say that I've really regretted buying a card for Commander. I will say that I bought a food chain that I haven't put in a deck yet. And that's a lot of money to spend on a card to not put in a deck.
And when you did that, I had you buy me a foil copy of the Judge promo, which I have also not put into a deck.
So if we're talking about a Commander card that I regret not putting in a deck yet, I'll say food chain. But I also built a Hogak modern deck less than a month before Hogak got banned. So I will say the 4 copies of Vengevine that I bought for that deck that plummeted in price after Hogak got banned. And that card is, I'm not going to say unplayable in Commander, but I don't have any decks that Vengevine belongs in. You have to cast 2 creature spells, and then Vengevine comes back from your graveyard. It's a 4/3 with haste. And that's its big thing. And a 4/3 with haste after you cast 2 creature spells in Commander doesn't seem that great to me, unless maybe it's in a Hogak deck, because you need more creatures on the battlefield to convoke your Hogak out. But so that's what I'll say. The 4 Vengevines that I bought for my modern Hogak deck that
the top commander that Vengevine has played in, according to EDHREC, is Hogak.
Yeah, I imagined. So yes.
Yeah, Goreclaw and then Sidisi.
Okay.
Brood Tyrant. So.
Sure. Goreclaw makes total sense.
So mine was a card I regretted buying only because I didn't end up using it. And so it's a reserve list card that I used to play in Noyandar Royal Shaper, which I have actually not been playing that deck as much recently. I've been heavier onto newer decks, but the card was Land Equilibrium, and I regret buying it because I only ever cast it once and it didn't do anything. And I mean, I had to have had that in the deck, I mean, at least 50 games. I mean, I just never wanted to cast it. So Land Equilibrium is a reserve list card from Legends. And it says, if your opponent controls at least as many lands as you, whenever they put a land into play, they have to sack another land. So they can't net lands anymore. It's an enchantment that costs 2 blue. And I remember buying the card for like $200.
Sure.
The card's like $315 now.
Okay.
No, market price for TCG Player looks like it's almost $360.
Well, there you go.
But I got out of the card long time ago.
Okay.
'Cause I was like, I'll just trade into my LGS because I can just build another commander deck.
Sure.
But I regret buying it because that was a lot of money. Fortunately, I was able to throw it into a new commander deck, so I didn't lose out on too much. But I felt bad buying a card that I didn't. And
you had that in Noyandar, right? And that was one of the few cards that you couldn't get in foil. So good riddance anyways.
Correct. Now it's only 2.
Yeah. Good riddance.
It's only 2 cards left.
Okay. Next question we have here is from Kyle. And they ask, setting the tone for the game ahead, what kind of experience you and the other players you want? So how do you set that tone, and how are you going about setting that tone?
So the last time we did that for our past stream where we had some guests join us, we actually used for the first time Rachel Weeks from Command Sphere. We used one that she had posted when trying to determine, power levels and your pregame chat. So what we did last time was it was just a series of questions, 5 of them. So the first one is, what turn can your deck consistently try to win on? Number 2 was, what are the number, give us the number of fast mana you have in your deck. 3 is, how many tutors are you running? 4 is, how many free interaction spells do you have? So those free counter spells, just 0 mana spells in period.
Right.
And then number 5 is, how many game ending combos do you have that include or incorporate 3 cards or less in your deck?
Right.
So we did this, and we also said we would like the games to last about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes, just because it's a 3-hour stream. If a game goes over, we do introductions, we take a quick break. We want to wrap up 2 games in 3 hours, but that does include chatting with everybody that's in the Twitch chat and with our guests and talking to them,
letting them plug their content.
Exactly. So this is what we did last time. Our games both lasted about an hour exactly.
Yep.
And none of the decks did anything that was outside of the answers that were given for all of the decks. Right. And so, these games have been released. You can check them out. There was a Chroma deck that won. That was really cool. Seeing a Chroma Thrasio. So I've never lost to an Chroma before. That was really cool. We had a Gyruda deck that did a lot of work with some milling. Work. So that was cool. But I this is what we did, and I think it worked. And so we're going to try this out for a little bit until maybe it doesn't work.
Yeah. So what about games that are not streamed? Because that's a note that I have here for myself. Do you have similar conversations in games that are not streamed versus games that are streamed? Because I know we try to fit the 1 hour. We try to do one thing I added as well is making sure that decks don't accidentally enable the other deck too much. Like, you don't want to play your Gyruda mill deck into someone who is just inherently a reanimator into deck as is. Well, something like that, exactly.
Sure.
So that's also another part of the the pregame chat that we do with our guests for viewers. But do you have similar conversations in your non-streamed games?
I do. Maybe not all of those questions. But I know when we play with our friends, we know if you're going to pull out your Jessica Falthus deck, I'm not going to run a creature-based tribal deck because you're going to wipe a lot of creatures. Right. So there's a lot of unspoken things that have happened, but we just want to make sure that we pair it up. And I don't think there's too much more that we add outside of these questions at this point, because we've been able to the decks that Noah wanted to play against have either been tuned down or taken apart.
Yep.
At this point, at least with our play groups.
Yeah, perfect. I don't have anything to add on to your notes.
All right. So we have a question from Oni MTG, and they ask, what tribe in the game that exists do you wish had more support? And what kind of cards would you like to see for that tribe?
I think both of us would agree that we need more legendary humans in Magic the Gathering. There's not enough, and both of our decks could use it. I
could go for some legendary humans.
Okay, but in all seriousness, maybe some creature types that don't have a whole lot of synergy. I know we talked a little bit about mirrors in some of our group chat about how maybe there isn't a true commander for mirrors, although mirrors do have a lot of synergies, printed along with them. I like kobolds, but kobolds might be a little too strong, mostly being 0 mana cost. So maybe kobolds that actually have real mana cost and a commander for it. And I think it would be cool to have something specific for changelings, and not just like the fact that changelings are every creature type, but if a creature is a changeling, it has some special commander or something that it can be with. But those were my only thoughts.
Yeah, the deck that I built that I feel like I had to pull every I don't like to say every good card into it, but it felt like I ran out of things to add because there just wasn't a ton. And I don't even know if that's the case as wolves.
Sure.
So I had a Tulsimir friend to wolves deck, which was a Selesnya fight deck. It was a fun deck. It just kind of I just was done with, playing it. Like I had played enough.
But maybe the latest block of Innistrad.
It did add more. I mean, I'm looking at it right now. We got a couple of rares. We got a Cemetery Prowler, which was those exile a card when you ever cast a spell that shows the type of the card that was exiled from someone's graveyard. You get to do something. So these are the spells cost 1 less. But for the most part, I felt like I was playing all the ones that we already had. The Night Pack Ambusher, which giving wolves and werewolves +1/+1. Watchwolf is just a 3/3 for 2. A lot of them didn't feel. I wish we had gotten. I mean, we have talked about this. It felt very off Midnight Hunt to Crimson Vow, because like Crimson Vow got like 3,000 legendary vampires, and Midnight Hunt got 1 werewolf.
Yes.
1 legendary.
1 legendary. Werewolf.
It would have been nice if we had gotten like 5.
It would be nice.
We got 1 in Alchemy though. We got I don't think it's legendary, but we got one of the alphas from the pack, and I was like, that would have been really cool. Maybe changing it up a bit, but
just put a legendary creature on there, add an extra color of pip, print it out on a piece of printer paper, stick it on the back of a basic land, and put it in a sleeve.
And then rule 0 it out.
Rule 0. It's your new commander.
So I'm gonna go with wolves. I think I want wolves.
All right. Okay. So Dan is asking us, do you have a legendary creature that you really like, but will never build a deck around? And if so, who is it?
Yeah, I think mine's going to end up being Titania. I like Titania, Protector of Argoth. I also like Lear, Disciple of the Drowned in blue.
Sure.
So Titania is a 5/3 elemental for 3 green. When Titania enters the battlefield, return target land from your graveyard to the battlefield. So that's really cool. That's perfect for commander. And whenever a land you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, create a 5/3 green elemental creature token. Excuse me. I think it's because I have an Omnath Locus of Rage deck, and I just don't really want to lose out on the red. And the problem is the decks look very similar.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't think that I would ever build Titania. Lear, Disciple of the Drowned is it's a great card. It's a 3/4 human wizard for 3 blue. I guess I don't know. I got a thing for 5 mana commanders here.
Sure, why not?
But it says spells can't be countered. Love it.
Sure.
And it says each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard has flashback. That flashback cost is equal to the card's mana cost. This is really cool. But you're in mono blue, which people already have preconceived notions of, and I think that it's an unsaid thing. So I go into a game playing mono blue, and I'm going to get targeted.
Yeah.
Even if I'm not maybe doing something that's crazy, it's just that is how it goes. And unfortunately, people, it's hard to get past.
It is
playing against mono blue. But I just know that you're building probably a control-y deck, and with alternate win cons.
Right.
Blue isn't known for winning off of combat damage. It's known for alternate win cons. I guess, in my opinion, from my experience playing against mono blue decks, I've seen Jace, Wielder of Mysteries, Laboratory Maniac, and Thassa's Oracle win more mono blue games.
Yep.
I don't know if I've seen one win in another way.
I've seen it. I've seen a blue deck win with infinite turns combat damage before, with the Kefnet, the newer Kefnet that allows you to reveal the first card that you were draw per turn, and if it's an instant or sorcery, you can cast it for 2 less than its casting cost, and then looping it back to the top of their library. But you might as well just win.
I mean, Urza could win off of swinging. I get that. Talrand Sky Summoner is making creature tokens.
Sure.
Bruvac is mill, so it's a mill commander. I mean, just looking at these, a lot of them are
Tetsuko Umezawa, my mono blue deck, all about swinging.
All right, you're right. So I have lost to that one with combat, I guess.
Missed Syndicate
Naga.
Naga,
if you land the Syndicate Naga, the game's basically over if you don't have removal. But and I guess Psymaster Thopterus, but I think it's only because I like it so much. I would have trouble building it the way that I would like to play it and still have fun with people in the pod.
Yeah, that makes sense. You might be surprised by my answer here because it's one of my favorite color combinations of colors for commanders, and it's it would scream Coyle builds this deck, and that's Muldrotha the Gravetide. I think we were both talking about this when Dominaria came out, and that Muldrotha might be hands all, be all, best Sultai commander.
Hands all,
hands
be
down,
all.
Hands down,
hands up.
We're
on the roller coaster,
and now we're hands down for Muldrotha the Gravetide, a 6-mana elemental avatar 6/6 for 3 and Sultai. That says during each of your turns, you may play up to 1 permanent card of each permanent type from your graveyard. So it cares about the graveyard, but and it's in just the right colors to care about the graveyard. But when it first came out, everyone wanted to build it. And so I didn't want to have a deck that everyone else did. And now that I've sat on it for like 2 years now, or however long it's been since Dominaria came out, it just doesn't seem very unique anymore. It doesn't do anything in itself other than cast stuff from the graveyard that got removed.
Can I surprise you and tell you that Dominaria came out 4 years ago?
4 years ago?
Came out in 2018.
Oh my God. I'm old. I'm an old person.
Yeah, you haven't been sitting on it for 2 years. Double that.
For 4 years, I've been sitting on... I have Muldrotha in a deck. I think Muldrotha is great in the 99. And it doesn't feel super oppressive or anything in the 90. I mean, not that it would particularly be an oppressive commander or anything, but it's very resilient as a commander, but it doesn't really do anything unique. And to me, I don't know if I would have fun with that deck. So it might be a surprise to you that I would not ever build a deck around Muldrotha the Gravetide. All right. Now, Jason Belk asks, how many, if any, decks do you double sleeve?
I did as many as I could when I was sleeving everything in mist sleeves. Unfortunately, I have in fact run out, and I knew that day would come. So I am not double sleeving as much because it's now just as inconvenient to re-sleeve something that's double sleeved than it was to move something around that was single sleeve.
Sure.
I double sleeve a deck if it's really expensive. I do not have a threshold.
Sure.
Like, it's not like if the deck's more than $300, so it's just if it already has a few cards that are probably in an inner sleeve, I might just do it for the rest instead of undoing all of them.
That's fair enough.
Yeah. How about you?
I double sleeve every deck that I can, unless I know for a fact that I'm going to be taking it apart. And you might think, how would you know if you're going to be taking it apart? If we ever play precons or anything, I'm not going to double sleeve a precon because I know I'm going to take it right back apart again.
Yeah, and then upgrade it later. So
yeah,
or majority of the cards
pull all the state. Andy needed a heroic intervention, which I had to pull out of my precon Dungeons and Dragons Adventures of the Forgotten Realms precon, but I already had it open, so it wasn't a big deal.
Convenient.
It was actually very convenient.
You didn't have to take it out of two sleeves.
I only had to take it out of one
only
sleeve.
A single sleeve.
So that'd be the only instance, though. I double sleeve everything else.
Unless Andy needs a precon card.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right. Great. So Dan asks, would you rather have to scarf down every meal without being able to talk to someone, or every time you take a drink of something, you have to scream, hydration?
that
I
last
hate both
one.
options.
Well, okay, I normally am kind of eating on the go anyways. I don't have a lot of time to just like sit down and have a meal, so I'll scarf my food. That's fine with me.
So for my job, I'm a relationship manager
Sure.
in the mortgage servicing industry. And I take clients out to dinner for many hours of dinner sometimes.
Sure.
Painful amounts of dinner in some cases. And maybe
I don't know which one would be worse for you in this situation.
I think it's got to be. I think I have to choose the scarfing the meal without being able to. So I'm going to say that if I scarf the meal, once I'm done eating, I can talk in this would you rather.
Yes.
Is how I'm interpreting this.
I would do it the same
and
way.
that's what I'm going to do because I can eat really fast or until I'm full, right? I assume I don't have to finish my plate. If they give me something where there's like something on there I'm not going to eat, I'm not going to eat that.
Right. You don't have to scarf that down.
Like some gross vegetables of some sort. Or
gross.
I do like vegetables, but not all of cauliflower. Get out of here.
If you're a kid listening to this, eat your vegetables. If you're an adult, make your own decisions.
Make your own decisions. If you eat a Hot Pocket, there's tomatoes in there.
That's a
pizza
fruit.
One.
That's a fruit technically,
Oh
but
crap!
I think it has the
nutrition
of a vegetable.
All right, the ham and cheese. They have a ham and cheese one with broccoli in it. I love broccoli.
I'm sure.
All right, but the question was not about Hot Pockets. It was about eating. So I'm going to go with scarfing down every meal without talking because I will stay out with clients and just hang out with friends after, and I will be having just water or a drink, whatever it is. And I can't be screaming hydration.
Not after every drink. Holy moly.
No.
You might have to start chugging your drinks just to get away from it. Okay. Lane the Main asks, if you could erase your memory of one video game to replay it for the first time, what game would that be?
MTG Arena.
You're going to erase?
Kidding. No,
I would never play it again. That's a
wow.
caveat. No, I'm kidding.
Oh gosh, probably. Yeah. So I would probably say Super Mario Odyssey.
Okay,
I love that game.
It's fantastic,
so much. It's one of my favorite games of all time. I could have gone back and said, like I don't know, Pokemon Heart Gold because that's my favorite of the series. But I'm gonna say Odyssey because I've played Heart. You can play that game differently every time. Odyssey, you're getting the same. Moons and stars. In Pokemon, you can just have a different team and run it through a different way.
Yeah. Now, would you want to? What if you could forget you've ever played a Pokemon game, period, and then play
all of them again?
Well, either that or start with your favorite one, so that your first Pokemon experience would be your favorite Pokemon. Or do you think maybe that is your favorite Pokemon because of your knowledge that you've accumulated of Pokemon up to that point?
No, that one's still there.
Okay.
It's way better than Sword and Shield.
Sure.
And Legends Arceus, which is out now on the Switch, is a very fun game, but it is not what I'm considering a traditional Pokemon game. It is definitely a spin-off into a game that was very good. And I had no expectations for what I was going to go into. And I was pleasantly surprised at the end.
Okay.
With how it went. And I will say, it was not easy, but mostly because I mashed through a lot of those cutscenes and did not realize there were some things I could do until I hit the end credits for the first time and then realized, wow, this game would have been way easier had I realized. And I'm kind of glad that I mashed through it because they made the cutscene just long enough that it was so irritating. Most people missed it because you're like, if I don't start playing and walking around catching a Pokemon in the next hour, I'm not gonna play this game.
Right.
So I'm gonna go with Super Mario Odyssey. How about you?
I would say that the one I would really want to do is Super Mario RPG for the Super Nintendo. It is not a very well-known game, but it is a turn-based strategy game developed by Square Enix, the same company that makes a lot of Final Fantasy games, but using the characters and things from the Mario franchise, along with a few other Mario franchise, or along with a couple Square Enix characters that just recently became Nintendo characters in like Super Smash Bros. Geno and Mallow. You can get their trophies, and I think there might even be some alternate costumes for the Amiibo fighters in there. So if you see them and you're wondering where they're from, Super Mario RPG, great game, great story.
I watched you play that game after you had surgery a few years ago.
Yes.
And you were like, I can't leave the house for like a month. So I was over. We were playing we played Smash Bros. And I watched you speed through that game quite a bit.
It's surprising how hard that game was as a kid and how easy it is as an adult. It's if you're looking for a turn-based RPG that's like for kids, it's really easy. Apparently it's a very, very easy game. And so you can just do a little bit of grinding here and there and get through everything simply. I was, one of those people that hoarded all of their items going, I got to save every single item for the final boss, because obviously that's the only time I'm ever going to need it. And then on the final boss, you're grinded to such a high level that you don't even need it anymore. So if I could go back and do that again and maybe have someone over my shoulder tapping, it's like, it's okay. You can use that mushroom to heal your health back here. It's fine.
All right. We have a question from a Johnny's Gay Pride mate. Hi, Lenny. Lenny asks, best snacks for Commander Night.
Okay. I have a definitively correct answer here.
Okay.
And it might not be something you think of. It's anything that you could put on a skewer. And that is because, one, your fingers won't get messed up by the food. You'll have the skewer. And two, you can take that skewer and then you can stab people that are at the table across from you when they
if you
destroy
attack me,
one of your
I'm going to
permanents.
stab you with this skewer.
Or if someone like goes back on a deal that they made, or specifically I have, if they say that they're still technically honoring a deal, but wording it in a way that's not in the true nature or intention of the deal, they deserve a poke with the skewer.
Okay. Yeah. So I want to debunk that real quick because I have the opposite. I make very non-easy to snack on snacks for game nights. I mean, you've been over for them, and I have made Caprese skewers.
Yeah.
And those are not single-handed or easy to eat and play cards. So it's you get large leaf basil and you put a little mozzarella ball and one cherry tomato and you put a little balsamic dressing on it.
Yes.
Just a little, just a smidge. But like it's not easy to pick up and
you'll probably get some balsamic vinegar on your fingers
a
little bit.
Yeah. So I don't know. Definitive snacks are probably like bar snacks, honestly, like pretzels or peanuts, maybe.
With the saltiest Chex Mix you've ever had in your life.
Yeah, but honestly, I usually when I have people over for game night, I make like a crock pot of meatballs.
Sure.
And I don't do barbecue meatballs. I do like the savory, like the beef gravy flavor meatballs. Those are really easy, but again, you have to have like a bowl and a fork. So it's not just easy to have sitting out at the table. 100% like against M&Ms. Like, no, this is not an M&M podcast. And I mean, I don't want them at my table.
Do you hate M&Ms? I didn't know that.
They're not good.
What about Skittles? Is there some
I love Skittles.
Okay, so there is a candy that we can use as +1/+1 counters.
Yeah, just not M&Ms unless they're the peanut or those fun ones. This is also not our Halloween episode, so I'm glad we're moving to candy here. But the ones with the little Rice Krispies in them, those were good.
Yeah,
those were good.
I like the one they have pretzels inside now too, or like Nutella.
Yeah, or combos. Just and if you're not in the U.S., combos are a snack.
Yes,
they're like pretzel or cracker filled things. And I did not realize that our friends that are in Canada or across the pond did not know combos were like a snack.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, combos are so good.
Yeah.
And it doesn't appear that there is a Canadian or across the pond alternative like there is for candy.
Sure. Well, if you're ever in Windsor, go on over the bridge. We'll buy you some combos. Okay. Another question from Lenny. They ask, what is your favorite piece of MTG content from this past year? You got anything? No? Well, let me tell you that, I don't read a lot of period. I'm not a reader, I'm not big into reading. So it's not really about articles for me or anything, but I'm subscribed to so many different YouTube channels just for some gameplay stuff. I really like, some of the bigger names like MTG Mudsta and, Quest for the Jank Lord. I kind of enjoy that they have like a storyline to their gameplays and stuff. But anywhere from Scrap Trawlers, Moderately Anonymous, Neo Royal, Mental Misplay, I Hate Your Deck, Play to Win. Those are all really cool for gameplay stuff, for like live Twitch stuff. I like the Mara's charity stream that you were on where people could like interact with the stream. I know Mr. Bever's stream does a lot of chat chaos commander
stuff.
But then I guess if I'm gonna put one on a pedestal, I'm gonna say Magic Arcanum's YouTube channel about Magic lore. I really, really enjoy listening and watching to their content.
Yeah, I wasn't able to pick a favorite here.
Mm-hmm.
Like on the spot, seeing this question, I don't know. If it's in the last year, I want to go back to the War of the Spark trailer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that wasn't in the last year.
That's pretty good, though.
That's the problem. It wasn't in the last year. What was in the last year?
I mean, we've had some pretty cool animations still in the past year. I loved the Kamigawa animation.
It was very
I thought
good.
that was really cool. And maybe even the content of just like the story coming back, the Wizards short stories or something, maybe.
Yeah, this was tough. This is a tough question. I have to think about this one.
Sure.
I mean, I'll come up with another answer.
Okay.
Jason asks, what are some examples of Rule Zero conversations that ask way too much detail?
So I think when you start talking about specific cards, that's really when the detail starts getting to be too much. So like if I was playing my Brash Taunter deck and I'm specifically asking, I just want to make sure no one has any exile effects because that's a complete counter to the way I play the game. It's like it's asking too much to ask for those types of things during a Rule Zero. So once you start naming specific cards, maybe with an exception to fast mana, then I think it's asking a little too much.
I don't know. I've struggled with this is a different type of deck than the normal type of whatever commander it is, and then it turns out that it's not.
Right, it's exactly the same.
And it was a problem. I started tracking games this year and whether or not I thought we had a successful pre-game chat and a Rule Zero chat, and I have marked a single one, which is great so far out of my 50 some games, that the person was like, please play a slower deck. I can't win fast.
Okay.
And then we all lost to Infect on turn 5.
Wow.
Turn 5. That's faster than
That's fast.
That's faster than most EDH games that I play.
That's faster than
It's faster than most games, period.
Yeah. I mean, and it's like you would think that Infect should be winning the game at the same speed as commander damage or something, and that's not going to happen on turn 5.
It was turn 5, and it was there was a combination of Proliferate and a Triumph of the Hordes at the right time.
Sure.
But there was a tutor. And I was like,
yeah.
well, this wasn't successful. But I probably would have asked if the Atraxa deck was running. In fact, I guess maybe I would have asked some more going forward.
Or what their definition of slow is. Apparently turn 5 is pretty slow.
And I think turn 8 is fast.
Yeah, turn 8 is pretty fast. There's a lot of stuff in our games that like I'm holding in my hand that I didn't get to do. Not that the game didn't go on for a proper amount of time, but you're right. I think
I was expecting to play a game until I pulled out Werewolves. I was expecting to go till like turn 12.
Sure.
And it was
turn 5.
Less than half.
Yikes.
Of 12. So yeah, I think that maybe if you are asking for some specific cards, but now that I've switched over to using Moxfield, I give everybody my deck list to start out. So you can see all the questions you want. I am not about that. I want to keep this thing a secret. EDH Rec, all of these websites are available for us to look at what the popular strategies are.
Yes. Yes.
If you're playing a deck that is like, if you're playing an Urza deck, we know that, a Johnny Skate Primate on Twitter, Lenny has an Urza deck where no card in the deck can cost more than 25 cents to come. But that I would assume, without knowing that, I would go, this is not the right power level. And Lenny, he'll say, no, 25 cents. This deck costs me like next to nothing aside from the commander. And but I would probably ask a lot of questions about that.
For sure.
Because I wouldn't want to waste an hour to get stomped. So this one is a really hard question because I'm more about take my deck list and ask anything you want.
Sure.
Because I'm not about hiding anything in my decks anymore. All right. Let's go to our last question here. Torin asks, is blue really the worst color to play against?
Okay, few notes here. Blue is, so I don't want to just say yes. I don't want to, but blue certainly is the color that tells you no, you can't do the thing that you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Like that's what blue is known for, and the typical like I think we talk about Orvar a little bit, or any of your or the
I used to have
disciple
Baral,
of the
chief
drowned.
of compliance.
Well, even with like
or Lear.
even with Lear, it's like you said, mono blue just has this notion that it's going to be oppressive and not let you do things. And I do think that when you build a mono blue deck, and even with Lear, you say instants and sorceries have flashback. Well, when you think of blue instants and sorceries, I'm thinking of bounce spells and counter spells. Those are the first two things that come to my mind. So I would say maybe mono blue is one of the worst colors to play against, but blue plus another color
might be even worse, but
it could be, but hopefully it's not. And hopefully they're building into a theme that isn't just trying to prevent you from doing what you are doing. So I would say I don't think it's fair to call it the worst, but at the same time, I totally understand why people do think that.
Yeah, this person has played games with me when I was testing out mono blue decks,
Sure.
and I have either disassembled or disassembled every single one of them. I had a Maloku the Clouded Mirror extra turns deck.
Mm-hmm.
I had a Baral win off of a Lab Maniac or a Thassa's Oracle that was just counter spells.
Mm-hmm.
We've played against Psymaster Thopterus, which can go crazy, and that one's a nice one to lose to. But I mean, I will say, specifically with you have told me that you feel anxiety with what's in your hand if I hold up any blue mana.
Sure.
And I really don't have the answer.
Right.
But the nice thing is that people, I countered your spell even without having a counter because you decided not to make me have it, which is great. Thank you for not making me have it. But I'm probably going to go out and say, yeah, mono blue is probably the worst color to play against, in my opinion. What it's doing is prolonging the game in most cases,
for sure.
to be honest,
for sure.
the way that it's played sometimes. But there are certainly blue commanders you could play against that would be fine.
Yeah, I did have an extra note here that I am particularly afraid when someone throws down a colorless deck, though. Because oftentimes that's associated with like trying to storm off with artifacts or giant Eldrazi's with Annihilator.
Yeah.
So that would be the only argument I would have.
Well, that is it for this week. You can find me on Twitter at Andy Flory.
And you can find me on Twitter at WormCoilEngine. Of course, we want to give a special thanks to Ryan Nichols, our editor and producer. Thank you so much for everything that you do. And for Chris Wolf, who handles all of our graphic design, thank you so much for everything that you do. And to all of you who sent us questions, we really do appreciate it. We love doing these episodes and answering all of your fire questions.
Fire.
Fire. Thank you all, and we'll talk to you next week.